their own little thing. They don't have to worry. Hi, welcome to Discovery Park. I'm Dr. Klein, and you're in Bio 100. So if you're in Bio 100, we'll probably talk about Discovery Park. Discovery Park is a kind of a branch campus run by EAC, and it has lots of things to offer us, especially in a class of Bio 100. One of the awesome things that you'll get a chance to do through at one point during the semester is come out here and do a service project. And what's that service project usually have to do with? Well, what you see behind me. You see those bushes and plants behind me? If you look close enough, you'll see a path back there. And that path was created by previous Bio 100 students. And so we often will bring Bio 100 students and give them the opportunity to get some extra credit by coming out here and working on our service project. And whether you're in my face-to-face or my web classes, you'll get that opportunity if you are close enough to be and able to come. If you're not able to come, then we will look for opportunities elsewhere for you to get some extra credit. Anyway, welcome to class. I hope you have a wonderful time. If you have any questions, please give me a call and I'll talk to you later. I'll see you in class. So we're going to start our little discussion of plants in the desert by looking at this unique plant. It has no leaves, at least none to speak of anyway, and the stems are green. And the green stems mean that they do photosynthesis and make the sugar. This particular plant is a bush that is called Ephedra, sometimes also called Mormon tea. The scientific name is Ephedra nevadaensis, and its common name in most places is Mormon tea. So as a bush, Ephedra can get to about 1 meter in diameter and maybe 0.5 meter to 1 meter tall. They have very unique little red flowers when they do bloom. So we have to ask the question, why no leaves? Well, again, it's a water-saving strategy. Again, the most limiting factor in the desert is the lack of water. And if you have no leaves, one, you didn't have to put in the resources to grow the leaves. And since you already have a stem, you can use that for photosynthesis as well. Leaves have incredibly large surface area, whereas stems have much less surface area. Here's our second plant for learning today, and it is the Fishhook Barrel cactus, sometimes called the golden head barrel cactus. Obviously, it has this golden head for its fruit, and so you can see why it may be called that way. Interesting thing about the Fishhook Barrel cactus is that it always kind of slightly tilts towards the south, and there's a very good reason for that. If you're slightly tilted towards the sun, which this plant is, then you can prevent the sun from hitting the broad side of the plant. And so again, you're reducing the amount of photosynthesis that you can do, which for a desert plant is a good thing if you don't have a lot of water. Obviously, cacti are really good at holding on to water. Their tissues are very loving plants. They just love the water, and we call that hydrophilic. Obviously, another strategy they have is they have all these ridges that go up and down all the way around the plant, and they're parallel. And this also can help shade different parts of the plant while other parts of the plant get sun, and is another useful water-saving strategy. It also helps prevent herbivory from animals that might take advantage of such fleshy tissue. And as you know, they have spines. Spines are what we call modified leaves. So they have a great ancestor or some common ancestor that had leaves, very small leaves probably, and eventually they just didn't need them anymore because, like Ephedra, they do photosynthesis on their stem. So no leaves. They use those leaves as spines. Incidentally, if you have thorns, like in one of our later plants, mesquite, thorns are modified stems. So stem that has changed itself over time evolved into being something sharp and pointy as a self-defense mechanism. Perhaps one of my favorite is Creosote Bush is one of our very favorites here in the Gila Valley. If you've been in the Gila Valley right after a rainstorm or even right before sometimes, the air feels, there's a special scent, and we call it the rain scent or the rain smell here in the Gila Valley. And what you're smelling is creosote bush. If you see this bush and you're out in the desert, grab a couple of leaves and rub it in your fingers, and you'll smell that smell of rain. Just a wonderful scent, and we love it. But that isn't some of the most interesting things about this plant, creosote. First of all, notice that it has really small leaves. Again, a water-saving strategy. Small leaves means less surface area, and they have roughly 4 times the root area below ground as they do shoots above ground. So that's pretty cool. But they also can live a really long time. And as a matter of fact, there is a creosote bush, a subspecies to our friend right here, that is estimated to be the most longest living creature on the earth. They estimate its age to be over 17,000 years old. And so quite an amazing plant. Now, the plants that we have around here are not 17,000 years old. In fact, most of the plants you see in the desert around you have grown and established over just the last century. So unfortunately, we don't have any of the really old ones here. And so on the left, you'll see its scientific name, Laria tridentata. And I probably should have said this before, but scientific names always come in twos. We call it the binomial naming system. And the binomial naming system always has the first letter, or first word is always capitalized, and the second word is not capitalized, its first letter.
Laria tridentata.
Laria tridentata. Next on our list is creosote bush. Next on our list is mesquite. Now, there are actually about 4 varieties of mesquite in the area. And you can see all 4 of them over at Discovery Park if you so wish. And they have the thorns. Remember, those are the modified stems, not modified leaves, but modified stems. And they're very prickly, right? Very important plant to local Native Americans. The seeds are a great source of carbohydrates. They make breads and flours and stuff out of it. And so, useful plant. So this is just one species of mesquite, and you can see this is its scientific binomial name. Prosopis ventutina is the scientific name. It's Latin. Almost all binomial names are Latin. Next in our list is jojoba, and jojoba is a bush. It's actually one of the few bushes we have here in the desert that isn't thorny and mean, but it does have a few strategies to help keep it safe. One of those strategies is how thick the leaves are. The leaves are almost a leathery texture to it, very thick, and that is because they have a very thick what we call a cuticle layer, or a waxy layer that covers the outside of the leaves, and that helps prevent water loss from the plant. The leaves are about the size of your pinky, and could be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller depending on the plant. The plant itself is about a meter in diameter, and once again, like the creosote bush, could be about a meter tall. Jojoba as a plant has many uses. The Native Americans would use it as a healing herb for cuts and scrapes. The oil would be very, very useful. So how do you get oil from it? Well, you can get kind of a vegetable oil, especially from the nuts and from the leaves. The seeds mostly are where we get the oil from. Now, the jojoba has many uses, the oil in particular. The oil was used by the Native Americans as kind of a healing ointment or something to put on scrapes and bruises and stuff like that. But even more interesting recently has been its replacement of whale oil in cosmetics. It used to be that whale oil was used to allow scents in shampoos and lotions and stuff like that to persist longer. Obviously, there's some drawbacks to killing whales for their blubber and oil, and so it became a great resource to replace whale oil. Another thing that jojoba oil has been used for, it can be used for a cooking oil or a vegetable oil. It's low in triglycerides, and so it's beneficial in that way. But it's also beneficial, or was beneficial, during World War II when it was used as a machine gun lubricant. I don't think that it's used much for that purpose anymore, but obviously a well-rounded product used for many purposes. This is Ocotillo. They make those beautiful kind of orangish red flowers and can be seen just about everywhere here in the valley, especially as you go up the mountain just a tad. You can see lots of Ocotillo. The picture here has Ocotillo with leaves on it. It only has leaves on it after a wet spell. And then one of the great adaptations that Ocotillo has come up with is that when the soil gets wet, it flushes out its leaves. When the soil dries up, the leaves all drop off. And so an Ocotillo could flush out leaves 2 or 3 times a year, unlike some of our trees that flush out leaves usually just once a year and then drop them in the fall. Ocotillo has an advantage where it just puts out leaves when there's water around and then drops them. Parts of the stem are green, so they're photosynthetic to keep it going during the rest of the season. Ocotillo has thorns, so again, those are modified stems, and they go up and down the entire plant and are very gruesome looking. Here is a relative of our mesquite trees. You'll note that the leaves look very similar to mesquite leaves, but if I were to compare them side by side, the leaves on this tree are much smaller. Also note the thorn coming out the side. It kind of looks like a cat claw, and as a result, the name of this particular tree, or it's a little bit smaller than a mesquite tree too, so it could be a big shrub depending on how you think of it, but we call this a cat claw acacia, and so I'll turn that over, and you can see Claw Acacia. Obviously, cat claw in reference to its thorns because they kind of look like a cat's claw. Just like the mesquite, small leaves, even smaller than the mesquites, and of course, once again, a water saving strategy. Now you might recognize this tree. It lines rivers and streams. Wherever there's water, you'll probably find this tree. This is called tamarisk, also known as salt cedar. It is an invasive plant here in Arizona along its deserts. Actually, along most waterways throughout the western United States. It is not native to the western United States, and we don't like it because it uses up a ton of water. It also has very small leaves, but it makes up for those very small leaves by having just thousands of them. There is just tons of leaves on these trees, and as a result, they actually end up using more water than we would like. And so we are actively, as a nation, our land management people are actively trying to destroy this plant wherever we can find it because it's such a nuisance. One problem with doing that, though, is that an endangered species, the southwest willow flycatcher, has made it its home. And so now we've got to protect the willow flycatcher at the same time of trying to get rid of this plant. Now, the southwest willow flycatcher does have a native plant that it likes. It's called cottonwood. You may have heard of that. And so we are trying to replace the tamarisk with cottonwood wherever we can, especially if we know that there's a family of the southwest willow flycatchers around. Now, the tamarisk is very difficult to kill. You can't just burn it. In a moment, I'll talk about wildfires, but burning it doesn't work. It'll resprout from its stem, and as long as the roots are intact. So, in order to get rid of it, you have to cut it to the ground, and then you have to paint the stump with very powerful herbicides in order to kill it. The other thing you can do is to find a natural predator. And one of those natural predators is called the tamarisk beetle. And it's not native to our area either, but we have established a population of it up in Colorado, and it's been slowly moving down into our state of Arizona. And just this year, we have found it in our valley. And so with over the next few years, we should see a drastic drop in tamarisk within our valley because of that beetle. The last thing we're going to talk about in this field trip is how many deserts there are. You're probably aware of the desert that we live in. It is part of the Chihuahuan Desert here that sticks into Arizona a tad. But we also have elements of the Sonoran Desert here in the Gila Valley. And so we get a bit of a mix between the two deserts. Some plant life and animal life of both exist here. These are the two Sonoran deserts. The other hot desert in the United States is called the Mojave Desert. It goes into California, parts of a little bit of western Arizona, Nevada, and even a small tip of Utah. And so that is the Mojave Desert. We also have what we know as cold deserts. Hot deserts, they limit their rainfall to about 20 inches of rain a year. Cold deserts have a little more rain, can be under 100 inches of rain a year. But cold deserts of the Great Basin Desert and the Colorado Plateau tend to have some desert aspects to it. Now, the Colorado Plateau has quite the range, so it's not all considered desert, but just certainly parts of it are, especially in northern Arizona. The other big difference between hot deserts, the Mojave, Sonoran, and Chihuahuan Desert, and the cold deserts, the Great Basin and Colorado Plateau, is that the hot deserts tend not to be fire prone, meaning that fire is not a natural part of their, wildfires are not a natural part of their ecosystem. Whereas in the Great Basin and the Colorado Plateau, wildfires are part of their ecosystem. They're needed for a nice, healthy ecosystem and should be expected. Then why do we have wildfires down here in Arizona? And the reason for that is because of invasive plants have come in and are altering the ecosystem such that wildfires are coming in and causing damage. I hope you enjoyed our brief introduction into desert ecosystems and also an introduction into our wonderful Discovery Park campus in Safford. I hope you'll take an opportunity to go over to Discovery Park and experience all that is there. It's usually open during the day. It's open to the public. Great place for a picnic. Anything else you'd like to do, go for a walk. Just hang out. It's great little resource we have there, and not too very far away.